roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes.
That's a goodie. That is a goodie.
Isn't it? There you go.
Yeah.
Going out with some Pink Floyd, Connor English, Lavina Good. Kia ora to you both. It's been wonderful. I'm Wallace Chapman, not Wallace Checkpoint. Checkpoint is next with Lisa Owen.
Kei te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere aki nei. It turns out the fear is real. The Prime Minister's announced more police are heading to Hawke's Bay following flood victims' continued warnings. Looting is happening. They're scared and in some cases armed. The Police Commissioner, Nationals Mark Mitchell and the Napier Mayor are all live. An orchardist warns Chris Hipkins to check his bank balance because growers need a lot more help and now. And the pain's spreading to your wallet too. Already some veggie prices have doubled. The public servant who's on track to be sacked twice in 2 days. And cheers to a South Island gin maker who is on top of the world. Don't forget, you can watch us live on the RNZ website.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Ahi Marie, good afternoon. I'm Evie Ashton. Rob Campbell is set to be sacked as chair of the Environmental Protection Authority, having already been ejected from Health New Zealand's board. The Environment Minister, David Parker, has written to Mr Campbell and a spokesperson says a process is underway. Mr Campbell strongly criticised a National Party policy at the weekend. Despite an obligation, he remained politically neutral. He believes he's been dumped due to his support for co-governance. The Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, told reporters during a visit to Hawke's Bay that that is not the case.
Let me be absolutely clear here. This is nothing to do with co-governance or the policy direction of health reform. This is to do with preserving and protecting something that I think that we should regard as very important, which is the political neutrality of our government institutions.
On the subject of the flooding and cyclone devastation, the Prime Minister said it's fair locals are feeling nervous and fearful after Cyclone Gabrielle. Residents shared their experiences with officials at a public meeting in Bayview last night. Many said they were feeling unsafe and scared and wanted a more rigorous approach to safety and crime. Chris Hipkins says residents have a right to be angry.
This is an unjust situation. And so I fully understand the level of emotion that's out there at the moment. I totally get that. It's justified, it's fair, and we will take that on board and we'll certainly, we're listening to what people are saying.
Chris Hipkins says police are putting more resources into the region. The wife of one of the two firefighters who died after a major slip in the Auckland coastal community of Muriwai says she was proud when her husband joined the fire service. Craig Stevens was critically injured when a house he was checking collapsed during Cyclone Gabrielle. Today, people gathered at Parihua Farm in Muriwai to pay their respects. His wife, Lucy Stevens, says her husband fully embraced life and will forever be part of the community's history.
You were always so special to me, but I've been blown away by the stories of how you've touched so many other lives. Life will never be the same without you by our sides. Love you, Craig.
Mrs. Stevens says her family is very grateful for the support of the Muriwai community. Severe tropical cyclone Judy is now a Category 4 storm with winds of up to 230 kilometres an hour as it moves through the islands of Vanuatu. At its centre, it has sustained winds of 165 kilometres an hour but is bringing destructive storm force winds reaching 230 kilometres an hour. Vanuatu Emergency Management spokesperson Brenda Williams says a red alert has been issued for much of the country. Homes are being evacuated, trees have toppled and there are widespread power cuts in the capital Port Vila. Met Service believes the cyclone won't strike New Zealand. The GCSB minister says New Zealand can't legally follow other countries that are clamping down on TikTok. The US and Canada are banning the video sharing app on government devices as a precaution against TikTok's data collection methods. But Minister Andrew Little says intelligence agencies here don't have the legal mandate to ban apps. At least 26 people have been killed and dozens injured after a passenger train collided with a freight train near the Greek city of Larissa. An ambulance worker at the scene gave the latest information.
The injured have fractures in the limbs, hip and rib area and breathing problems. The fire has been put out in the front carriages. Firemen have gone into the carriages trying to remove the dead so that they can then rescue those trapped inside.
Footage shows fierce flames and thick plumes of smoke. And more than 100 University of Auckland staff and students have marched this afternoon in a strike over work and pay. The University of Auckland says it's disappointing to begin a new academic year with strike action. To sport, and the All Blacks coach Ian Foster won't reapply for the top job. New Zealand Rugby announced today the next coach will be named within 6 weeks. Foster has this afternoon ruled himself out of contention, saying he wanted the next coach to be announced after September's Rugby World Cup. He says his sole focus is preparing the All Blacks for the World Cup. And the Black Caps' historic one-run win over England is a much-needed confidence boost after a run of 7 tests without a win, says coach Gary Stead. Before yesterday, New Zealand had lost 5 and drawn 2 of their last 7 games. The match was only the 4th in 150 years of Test cricket where a team following on had won, and just the second time the winning margin was just 1 run. Stead says the Test sets them up well for the upcoming series against Sri Lanka.
Whether you win or lose, your confidence will improve. I mean, we came from a position where I think most people gave us no chance of winning the game into a position to fight and then ultimately to get there in the end. There's no doubt that will help with confidence in the group.
That's the news.
Claims of a crime wave in cyclone-hit areas.
People have their guns out. What's going to be done to, say, a father protecting his family when scumbags come in to get whatever?
A scandal in the public service.
Look, I would still have criticised National for their 3 waters policy because I think the policy is wrong, and I was saying that in my private capacity.
And a sensation at the Basin.
When you look through that team, there are some world-class players who have done a great job for New Zealand for a long time, and they are a gutsy team.
Always gutsy. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. You're with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. For western areas from Northland to Wellington, also for Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, the Central High Country and Waded Upper, mainly fine. Areas of fog tomorrow morning, then cloudy periods south of Whanganui. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, partly cloudy, isolated showers mainly in the north, clearing this evening. Nelson and Marlborough, mainly fine. Showers possible inland for Marlborough and about the Kaikoura coast tomorrow afternoon. For Bulla, showers developing today, more frequent for a time tomorrow. Westland and Fiordland, rain for a time today with possible thunderstorms. Showers tomorrow. Fine weather for Canterbury. Otago and Southland, a few spots of rain today, mainly fine tomorrow with a shower or 2 possible in the afternoon. And for Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy, light showers today. It's 6 minutes past 5. I'll have news headlines and any traffic news at 20 past 5.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai, ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. We need help now and for a long time to come. That's been the consistent message from growers in cyclone-devastated Hawke's Bay to Prime Minister Chris Hipkins, who was there today to see the damage firsthand. Lauren Crimp filed this report from Hawke's Bay.
So we can chuck you in the tough end. That's all right. First day in the job, basically. That's all right. So
That's Rātahi Cross welcoming the Prime Minister to what's left of his kiwi fruit orchard in Waiohiki. It's a sea of mud and claggy silt, scattered with the broken remnants of fencing, machinery, vines and rotting fruit.
It's mind-boggling, but we're here for the long haul. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true. Yeah. We're born and bred here. We're here to keep going. Yeah. We're here to get the region back again as quickly as we can, and we're going to need your help to do that.
Rātahi Cross, whose whānau has farmed this land for 100 years, says they're in it for the long haul because it's not just about them. There's a whole community relying on kiwi fruit. But he makes no bone about the fact central government is going to have to cough up some serious cash.
So there's a whole corridor approach that needs to happen. Yeah. Gosh, what a time to become Prime Minister. I hope your bank is full. Yeah, well.
Grower Mark Erickson from the Waimar Fruit Company was equally frank with the Prime Minister.
But we've been let down. We've invested millions and millions of dollars, all us, tens of millions, you know, in families or whoever. But it's the infrastructure that's failed us, and then it's like lotto. There's a lot of people on the other side of the river here haven't been affected, and so we shouldn't be penalised. The ones who've been affected to, and that's where it's hardest.
You can certainly see where the breaches come through here.
At Upatu Orchard in Dartmoor, another grower, John Bostock, told Chris Hipkins he was looking at $200,000 of damage per hectare, and insurance won't cover crop losses.
So our machinery and our sheds are all insured, but crops for this type of event are non-insurable. We can insure for hail, but that's very expensive, and most of us don't at the moment.
Chris Hipkins had been scheduled to visit the embattled northern Hawke's Bay town of Wairoa today, but was grounded because the Air Force chopper needs servicing. However, he did drop into Hastings Aerodrome to talk with some pilots who led the rescue missions, plucking people off the roofs of flooded buildings. Jimmy Guerin owns Helicopters Hawke's Bay.
Some people up there for 36 hours. So it was probably a day and a half effectively. And then you'd hear of some people still being trapped at their house, and you'd go and get it. And then after that, you know, checks on those, and then we started the provision work and getting food and provisions and people to dry land.
Kahu New Zealand pilot Mark Law has been doing supply drops of food, water and fuel to cut off communities in his Black Hawk. He says farmers are desperate for roads to be cleared.
A lot of the little centres and things, they look pretty good. You know, they look really standing up, but the farms and the places cut off are the ones that are really needing assistance.
Speaking to media later, Prime Minister Hipkins has indicated he's got the message that more support is needed.
The start was really just about let's get boots on the ground as fast as we can and get some things happening within days. Half of that money's already, or nearly half of that money's already in bank accounts of the growers, so that and the primary sector, so that they can actually start that work. And there are more applications being processed by the hour, every hour.
The government has this afternoon announced the terms of reference for the Cyclone Gabrielle Recovery Task Force to match up local responses with the work of government agencies and the private sector. The initial focus will be the immediate recovery, but long-term, the task force is going to cover issues to do with managed retreat, adaptation and resilience.
And that was Lauren Crimp reporting. The outspoken director, Rob Campbell, is set to lose another job, this time chair of the Environmental Protection Authority. Our deputy political editor, Craig McCulloch, joins us now. OK, Craig, what are you hearing?
Good evening, Lisa. In short, a second sacking is coming. Rob Campbell was axed from Te Whatu Ora Health NZ yesterday. He is soon to be gone from the EPA too. I can confirm that the Environment Minister, David Parker, has written to Mr Campbell. A spokesperson for the Minister has told me that. The spokesperson told me, quote, a process is now underway. That means Mr Campbell now has a time frame within which to respond. I would expect there to be an announcement on his departure fairly soon, probably tomorrow. I spoke to Mr Campbell. I gave him a call at about 3 o'clock, and at that time he said he had yet to see any correspondence from David Parker yet, so this is very much still a developing story. This all started, of course, from that post Mr Campbell made on criticising the National Party's Three Waters policy as a governance, also fairly critical more widely of the National Party. Actually, he is required by a code of conduct to be politically neutral, and although he does not believe that he breached that code, ministers have been pretty clear they see this as an obvious breach and a sackable offence.
It's following a pattern, Craig, not dissimilar to the one we saw yesterday, so we're going through some motions here. Why does he have to go from the EPA as well?
The problem really for Rob Campbell here is his utterly unrepentant stance, a refusal from him to accept any wrongdoing. He was sacked from Te Whatu Ora and then almost immediately went to the media. He was here on Checkpoint. Then this morning he did a full round of media interviews, full court press, criticising the decisions, suggesting that he had been dumped for other reasons, for potentially his support for co-governance, for example. He certainly has not gone quietly. The Prime Minister was Asked today about those claims that Rob Campbell was axed due to his views on co-governance, he strongly denied that. He said it was purely down to that principle of political neutrality. It would be very difficult at this stage for the Prime Minister, for any minister, to trust that there would not be a repeat of this behaviour in future from Rob Campbell. And then, of course, there is this double standard. If he can't be trusted to sit on a health board, why is it okay for the environment? That's the point the opposition parties have been making. I suspect that is where the Environment Minister has landed too. Rob Campbell will have to update his LinkedIn profile once again.
Thank you, Craig. That is our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch there. It is just gone 14 minutes after 5. Kia mau tonu mai. Do stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. The fear is real and the government's response to it's been way too slow. That from National's police spokesperson Mark Mitchell, following flood victims' ongoing claims of looting and other crimes in cyclone-hit Hawke's Bay. The Prime Minister has announced more police are being sent in, despite initially hosing down residents' concerns, saying there was no state of lawlessness, and also taking a swipe at those amplifying rumours. But last night, at a meeting of about 200 people from rural communities around Napier and Hastings, residents told officials they're scared, sleepless and armed in some cases. The people spoke of seeing motorcyclists videoing property and an intruder inside the house shining a torch into their children's room at 1 a.m. The police have repeatedly said there's been no increase in crime, but today Chris Hipkins addressed residents' safety concerns.
When it comes to issues around safety, for example, we have got the Commissioner of Police putting extra resource into the region. I've had regular ongoing conversations with him. I had another conversation just this morning, again following up on some of the conversations that have happened in the last 24 hours. We hear the message, we hear the concern, but we also just hear the heightened level of anxiety at the moment because it's a really tough situation. And, I think people who find themselves in this position have a right to feel nervous, they have a right to feel anxious, they have a right to feel angry because this is an unjust situation. And so I fully understand the level of emotion that's out there at the moment. I totally get that. It's justified, it's fair. And we will take that on board and we'll certainly, we're listening to what people are saying.
What's your immediate response to that though? I mean, they're wanting the defence force there and they're wanting more boots on the ground as soon as possible. What's going to happen right now?
Yeah, so we have got 145 extra police on the ground now. Stuart Nash, local MP, Minister of Police, will be meeting again with the police today, locally, just to make sure that they're getting all of the support that they need.
And that was the Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins. Now joining us is Police Commissioner Andrew Costa. Tēnā koe, Commissioner. How did you get this so wrong?
Lisa, it was a very unfortunate set of circumstances. We attended the incident on the night, the particular one where we provided incorrect information to the Prime Minister, but we didn't record it in the normal way. I've apologised to the Prime Minister that the information we provided him was incorrect and he's accepted that apology. We need to do better than that and we will do better.
You're talking specifically about an incident involving road workers who were threatened with a firearm, right? I'm talking more generally. It seems that you have, not read the room very well down in Hawke's Bay, so how did you get the whole thing so wrong in terms of the residents' fears and concerns?
Look, Lisa, I fully accept that we have a concerned and understandably fearful community down there. We have always acknowledged that, and that's why we deployed a large number of additional staff into the area. We are very actively present in those communities. We are establishing a 24/7 police base in the Bayview community, a mobile police base, so that people can come and talk to us about things they're seeing, things that are concerning them. I'm very pleased with the work that our people are doing on the ground in those places.
Do you think that your comments personally have been tone deaf?
Oh, look, I absolutely accept that observations about what was happening with crime were unhelpful for those communities, so I absolutely acknowledge that. The context at that time was responding to a range of information about things that were occurring, much of which was inaccurate, but for those communities it wasn't what they needed to hear, and so, look, fully understand the desperate and miserable situation in which they find themselves.
So,
And we are
Commissioner,
doing
you were
our
getting
level best
inaccurate
to make those
information.
concerns.
You were getting inaccurate information.
We have had an instance where the information that we had was misrecorded, but the overall picture of what was happening on the ground hasn't changed in terms of what our people are seeing. They are actively engaged with all of these communities and talking to them, and I'm very happy with the work that they're doing to reassure people, recognising that this is an incredibly difficult situation for them, and police can only do its part.
So when you refer to the situation on the ground, so you have an accurate picture. You're talking about the fact that you keep referencing crime statistics and saying they haven't increased, I'm assuming. You also mentioned the fact that you thought your comments were unhelpful. So I'm putting this to you. Is it possible that you're right and the residents are right? Yeah, crime overall might not be increasing, but they have very serious, real concerns and are living in fear. Perhaps they are experiencing just different crimes to what normally occurs.
Oh, look, I absolutely accept that they are fearful, and that's why we have such a big presence in those communities. And when I speak to what's happening on the ground, I'm talking about the observations and feedback that our staff have from their significant presence there and their engagement with those communities. We are doing our level best to create reassurance. This is a very large area that's affected by, these events, and it's very dispersed. So obviously it's not ever going to be possible to have a police officer outside every house, but we do have a heavy police presence on the ground, and we are making ourselves available, in a static location in Bayview particularly, to hear from the residents in the surrounding areas about the things that are concerning them.
Are the officers on the ground telling you a different story to what the statistics are telling you?
No, they're not. The officers on the ground are, reflecting the concerns in the community. They're also, though, reflecting that it is well managed from a security and safety point of view.
So is there looting happening, Commissioner? Is there looting happening? Where people came along to a meeting last night and, for example, one person said they'd discovered an intruder in the house with a torch, shining it into their children's room, and someone else said they'd seen people videoing property, and another person said that a generator, a $5,000 generator had been stolen. Are those things actually happening?
Look, we have absolutely had instances of theft and burglary. We do not have widespread looting across the area, and in part my earlier comments have been responding to that. But absolutely we've had incidents of despicable people taking advantage of the situation, and we are actively dealing with those.
Okay. So if you have it under control, Commissioner, what has changed that you're now sending in more people?
We're maintaining the high level of additional staff that we have, 145. We're mobilising a further mobile police station into the region that will allow us to maintain a more consistent presence in the different locations. In the end, our role is both to respond to, actual safety and feelings of safety, and, we have to acknowledge that there is a gap in the extent to which these communities are feeling safe, and we want to reassure those people and let them know that police are there. So,
did the Prime Minister express his disappointment in the way you have handled this in his conversations with you?
I expressed my disappointment to him that we provided incorrect information. I have apologised to him. He has accepted that. It was an easy oversight to make in the midst of a very busy period, but it's not good enough, and we need to do better.
Thank you for joining us. That's the Police Commissioner, Andrew Costa there. 22 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. Police Commissioner there saying they're setting up a mobile police hub, a second one, and they're hoping to set up a third in the coming days. This is after the Prime Minister this afternoon acknowledged the genuine nervousness, anxiety and anger being experienced by people in those cyclone-hit regions who are reporting looting and crime. Let us know your thoughts. Text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. The email address, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. rugbyworldcup.co.nz. Let's get to the headlines. Ko Evi Ano tēnei.
New Zealand can't legally follow other countries that are clamping down on TikTok on government phones. The United States and Canada say government employees must delete the video sharing app because its methods of collecting data enable access to the contents of the phones. GCSB Minister Andrew Little says intelligence agencies here don't have the legal mandate to ban apps. Rob Campbell is likely to lose his job as chair of the Environmental Protection Authority, just a day after being ejected from the Board of Health New Zealand for failing to be politically neutral. Mr Campbell strongly criticised the National Party's Three Waters policy. The Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, has been talking to Hawke's Bay locals today about the destruction caused by Cyclone Gabrielle and the help they need. Meanwhile, 2 properties in rural Waimata, north of Gisborne, have been evacuated after a large crack appeared on the road. The District Council says engineers are carrying out an urgent assessment of Waimata Valley Road. A Waikato mayor says people forget how vulnerable remote communities can feel in the face of antisocial behaviour. Waipa's council is considering banning non-legitimate vehicles on some rural roads after boy races caused havoc. More than half of the $90 million cut from budget for Dunedin's new hospital is related to the building itself and not its clinical contents. Almost half of the $200 million budget blowout has been clawed back, but the hospital will now have fewer beds and imaging equipment. Several brands of hummus are being recalled due to the possible presence of salmonella. New Zealand Food Safety says the products are under the Lisa's, Greater Hummus and Prep Kitchen brands. And in sport, the All Blacks coach Ian Foster is ruling himself out of contention for the top job. New Zealand Rugby says the next coach will be named within 6 weeks. Foster says his sole focus is preparing the All Blacks for the World Cup. Those are the headlines. Now let's get to some traffic. First, the good news. Yes, there is some. State Highway 23 to Raglan will open later this week, says Wakakotahi, by Saturday or earlier if possible. That's a win, people. Still in the Waikato, State Highway 1 at Rangiriri, there are long delays northbound near Paitai Road because of road resurfacing. And the highways that are still closed, State Highway 2, Napier to Waidor and Otoko to Puha, State Highway 5, Eskdale to Taupo, State Highway 35, Te Puia Springs to Tolaga Bay, and State Highway 38, Waidor to Lake Waikaremoana. I will have more news headlines and any other traffic news for you at 20 to 6.
A highway to somewhere, Kapai, State Highway 23. Thank you, Evie. And more on the All Blacks. New All Blacks coach incoming. In the last hour, Ian Foster has confirmed he won't be seeking reappointment to the top job after the World Cup. His announcement was hot on the heels of New Zealand Rugby saying the next coach will be confirmed in a month or two. Now we're joined by sports reporter Felicity Reid. Well, knock me over with a feather, Felicity. So, Ian Foster, what is he saying?
Well, as you can tell, you're not really surprised. You probably heard his comments last week and about the way he wanted to see this process play out, and he's doubled down on that. I've got his latest statement here, and I'll just read it out. As I said last week, I felt the best way for our team and our entire management group was to have this process done after the Rugby World Cup. That hasn't happened, but we will accept the decision and move on. My sole focus remains unchanged. It is to lead this All Blacks team and management group in our planning and preparation so that we go to France with the goal of winning the Rugby World Cup and making this country proud. I won't be reapplying for the job of head coach.
Blink twice if you need help, Ian. It kind of has that feel to it.
It does a little bit because this came straight from the New Zealand Rugby headquarters just an hour ago.
Yeah, okay. So it's unlike New Zealand Rugby to talk publicly about their coaching plans. So what's brought this on to today?
So yes, New Zealand Rugby has all throughout this process tried really hard to be keeping quiet on it. And you know, as we've heard that Ian Foster spoke out about it last week, Scott Robertson did the same thing. He's another potential candidate for that. So today, Dame Patsy Reddy, she's the chair of the New Zealand Rugby, she can explain to you why she had to face the media.
We appreciate these decisions are challenging as we try to find the balance between public scrutiny and high performance expectations. Until now, New Zealand Rugby has been reluctant to talk publicly about an appointment process for the All Blacks coach to protect the integrity of the process and to minimise the scrutiny on the individuals involved. Recent events, however, necessitate some clarity.
So reportedly, senior All Blacks and the current All Black management team were told about the announcement that we had today about that it being 6 weeks before this head coach will be named. So they were told about that yesterday. So that's why Ian Foster probably had that statement pre-prepared for us there. But it's also by setting this timeline of the announcement within 6 weeks, it means that the next All Black coach, the 2024 All Blacks coach, will actually be named before the All Blacks have played any games in 2023, let alone the World Cup. So that's their first action is in July. So they're going to know even before they probably go into camp with Ian Foster who the next coach is that they need to impress.
I'm just back at the politics of rolling her out to make the announcement. You know, that is a whole other story, but that is interesting in and of itself, isn't it, Felicity?
Well, yes. The word from New Zealand Rugby was that Mark Robinson, so that's the CEO, he was very conveniently on some World Rugby business and not in New Zealand today.
Thank you, Felicity. That's our sports reporter, Felicity Reid there. Kitty businesses are desperate for State Highway 1 to Northland to fully open up, with lengthy detours keeping visitors away. It's been 3 weeks since State Highway 1 through the Brynderwyns closed due to slips, and it'll be at least a month before it fully reopens. Reporter Louise Tanuth and camera operator Marika Havazi have the story.
The vital link to Northland reduced to one lane of northbound traffic today, with work on the Brynderwyn slip still underway. Heavy vehicles still need to detour through Dargaville. This disruption is cutting off tourist towns reliant on holidaymakers heading north. Aroha Island holiday accommodation is a 12-hectare sanctuary northeast of Kirikiri. It's full of diverse native plants and birds, including the rare North Island brown kiwi. Manager Tony Sharp says this should be their busiest period.
As you can see, this is our upper campground, and other than one tent, it's deserted.
Instead, they've got just 3 construction workers staying in their holiday house and one lonely tent in the campground. Tony Sharp says bookings have completely dropped off and they're losing thousands.
Between $10,000 and $15,000 worth of income. And for a small business like us, that's pretty substantial, and it's not something that we can recover. We are in a situation now where we have to contemplate whether we can keep open.
The business is usually closed during the winter months, so timing is crucial for them to get back to usual. He says the state of Northland's roads is having a severe impact. Even with the detours in place, people aren't travelling north.
They just say, well, the main road is closed, and they then cancel their trip up to Northland. So, and even some of those alternative routes are being impacted, unfortunately. So we've had quite a few cancellations because of people just can't literally get here or don't think they can.
Marsden Estate Winery is also feeling the impact.
I just think there hasn't been anything spent on it for quite a few years. You know, everything's been patched up and we need to look at some serious sort of maintenance now.
Owner Cindy McIver says business is down about 30% due to the closure of State Highway 1.
It just adds another 2 hours onto the journey either way, so people, I think, will think twice about coming up here.
While they have a few weddings and tour groups booked, she's bracing for what could be a dire period to come. The detours are also impacting what fresh goods like cheese and fish the winery can get its hands on.
We just have to change our menu around to accommodate what we've got and what we haven't got, so if we haven't got it, we can't sell it.
They managed to get their Pinot Gris and Chardonnay grapes in before the storm hit, but their red grapes weren't ready to harvest.
Because of all of the rain that we've had, the grapes fill up with water, so we just need to go through and check and just see, if we're going to be making any red wine.
Whangarei Mayor Vince Kokorulo says trucks are losing valuable time and money using the current Dargaville detour. Many are using the Paparoa and Oakley Road detour, which isn't suitable for heavy vehicles, but the quickest route. Waka Kotahi is adamant it's doing all it can, but Vince says things need to be ramped up.
We need not just one team of contractors, but we need several teams of contractors. And this is where Waka Kotahi needs to actually go the next step and go, okay, what do we need to do to get this road up and working? And that's where the government needs to come in and step in and say, okay, let's get the road open.
He's got his hopes pinned on a 4-lane expressway from Auckland to Northland in the future to fix their travel woes. But in the meantime, he says they're just desperate for State Highway 1 to fully open up.
At the moment, we'll take what we can get, but we would like that ultimate goal, and we would like the politicians to be thinking about the future of Northland, not just about the here and now.
In the meantime, businesses are anxiously waiting for their roading lifeline to be restored.
And that report from Louise Tanuth, the video version, which was filmed by Marika Habazi, will be on our webpage. It is 27 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. Do stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. And it is time for the business news. Ko taku hoa I Naianei, ko Nona Peltier. Nona joins me in the studio to talk all things business. TY aluminium smelter. Future is still uncertain, right? So what's going on?
Well, Meridian came out today and said that they have been talking to the owners of the TY smelter in Southland about what happens after 2024 when their power supply contract runs out. And there's still a lot of issues to resolve. They reckon it's going to take 4 to 6 months to perhaps resolve them. Not necessarily will be resolved. Some of the main issue is price. How much is the power supply going to cost TY? But it's not the only issue. There's an issue where Meridian is wanting to see a comprehensive plan on how they're going to clean up that site. There's been some damage there from waste from the smelter, and that's yet to be resolved. The other things that they're concerned about are the longevity of whatever contract they can strike with TY. So they said they've been struggling with 1 or 2 year type contracts. They said that's not good enough. They want something more like, 20, 30 years as a contract, not something short term. And then there's this other matter about what happens when hydro lakes are low and there's pressure on the network, the electricity network, and that's when they would like TY to be contractually required to reduce their usage so as the rest of the country can have more power available to them. And these issues aren't small. They're not resolved. And of course, there's still the price one on top of it. So the chief executive of Meridian was announcing their half-year result today. Pretty good result, and but there's all these other issues about long-term supply and so on. Neil Barclay said, well, he's the chief executive. He said, well, one way or another, okay, yes, if we don't make a deal with TY, there's going to be a short-term blip in the sector. But overall, he says, we're going to use up all that supply, whatever's there, over the years to come. And we're going to carry on with our projects regardless. So watch this space on that one.
Austrian-based OMV is looking to see its local exploration and production operations. What's the reason?
They want to sell them.
Sell them?
Yeah. Well, it has to do with they're looking to transition out of oil and gas. And so right at the moment, this is the country's biggest oil and gas producer. It turned out that they've been in business here for a while, but in 2019, I believe it is, 2018. So in 1999, they set up shop here. 2018, they bought Shell Oil's assets in New Zealand. Now they want to sell them as part of their wider Asia-Pacific restructuring. They're looking to get out of the industry, reducing their production globally by 20% by 2030 and ending it completely by 2050. So they're looking for a buyer. We'll see what happens with that. I don't know what takers there are, but anyway, they paid $578 million for the Shell oil assets back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And quickly for the markets, please.
Okay, so we fell just 18 points today on the NZX Top 50, nearly 0.2% as a drop, and that was to 11,876. The New Zealand dollar was rising in late trading today. I was watching it ticking up there. It's currently at 62.1 US cents, 91.9 Australian, 51.6 British pence.
Thank you, Nona. Nona Peltier there with business news. Well, National says the government's been way too slow in bolstering police numbers in Cyclone hit Hawke's Bay. The Prime Minister has announced more police are being sent in despite initially hosing down residents' concerns, saying there was no state of lawlessness. While today, Chris Hipkins says people have a right to feel nervous, anxious and angry. And joining us now is National Party Police spokesperson Mark Mitchell. They're sending in more resources, Mark, so they've got it covered, yeah?
Yeah, 15 days, 16 days too late. Right on day one, I said that they needed to send in overwhelming numbers and force to give people a sense of safety and security. They were in a state of emergency. A lot of them were cut off. A lot of them didn't have communications. A lot of people have lost everything that they own. The one thing that the government must take seriously and be responsible for is being able to make people actually feel safe and secure, and they completely failed in that.
Yeah, so the Police Commissioner has repeatedly said that crime statistics have not risen in these districts. On the other hand, you have residents saying they feel scared. So who's right?
Well, the Police Commissioner made a big error in coming out and telling people that were under a state of emergency that had no comms. And at the public meeting that I attended last night, they asked for a show of hands of people that had some form of looting or intimidation or had some type of incident and hadn't reported it. Over a third of the people there put their hand up. And then they went on to say that they were using the 105 number, which was a complete failure because all they were doing was getting a text message back. And these are people whose houses are 2 metres under silt, telling them trim your hedges. It might help stop looting.
Seriously?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what were people saying had happened in their cases?
So what they'd done is a lot of them had established their own patrols at roadblocks because they found that there was looting starting to happen, people coming onto their properties. The gangs were very active. They are terrified. The people in the Hawke's Bay are terrified of the gangs to the point in the meeting last night that they don't even want to mention who they are. And by the way, the gangs had one of their women there last night with gang patches on at the meeting, which of course was a complete affront.
Yeah,
and,
but they're community members too, right? That's what they're community members too. So should they not be allowed to attend the meeting?
Well, it's me. I wouldn't let them be at the meeting. Absolutely not. I'd ban them. They're not. When they want to rejoin society in a positive way, then let's do that. And I'd be the first one to step up for any gang member, especially one that's got a family that actually wants to leave that criminal life, break that intergenerational cycle, and rejoin society in a positive way. I'd be the first one to step up and help them. But while they continue to peddle meth and violence and family harm, then no, they don't actually deserve the same consideration.
Okay, so the fear is real and people acknowledge that. I'm wondering, is the threat real or is it a perception in some cases? We've heard examples of people saying other residents are coming in and taking things from their discarded goods pile. And they're regarding that as looting. Well, it's rubbish, isn't it?
I mean, Lisa, I think go back and have a look at the public meeting. All the media were there, which was a good thing, and the government got called out on the narrative that they're trying to sell you guys, and they are scared, and there is looting, and people were standing up and giving very clear examples of their own experiences and what had happened to them.
Residents also said they're arming themselves. Mark, do you have any concerns about that?
Of course I have concerns about that. They shouldn't be in a position where they feel like they have to take up arms to protect themselves and their families, but that's the position that they feel they've been put in.
Andrew Costa has conceded that some of his comments have been unhelpful.
You know what? It's common knowledge that I don't agree with the way that his approach to policing in New Zealand, but I'm going to defend him on this one. He's been thrown under the bus by a Prime Minister that should not have gone anywhere near making the comments that he did about road workers who are out trying to support their community and were held at gunpoint.
He was acting on information given to him by the Commissioner. You're playing a political card now, aren't you, Mark?
He didn't need to comment. All he needed to say was quite simply this. The people in the Hawke's Bay are under a state of emergency. We take their safety and security as a priority, and we will treat any report seriously and we'll follow up on it. He didn't need to come out and say it's unsubstantiated and make comments like that. He's the Prime Minister, and he should never have gone down that road. The police, I don't know what went wrong in terms of the information, but what all Hipkins has done is quite simply throw Costa under the bus and use him as a scapegoat. And by the way, in defence of Andrew, during that state of emergency, I had the surf lifesavers there who were getting burnt out after 5 days and doing 160 rescues on the first night. They were getting no support or help down there. They called me. I called Andrew and said, listen, they need help. You need to get more lifesavers in from somewhere else to actually support them. Andrew went away and made that happen. So I'm supportive of him. He actually provided some real assistance and help there, but he's been thrown under the bus on this. The frontline police are doing an outstanding job. I spoke to frontline police in the Hawke's Bay and Wairau and in Gisborne today. They are working as hard as they can, but they needed more numbers, and the government failed. They didn't put the numbers in that they need, and now they're responding.
Appreciate your time, Mark. Thank you very much for joining us. That is Mark Mitchell, who is the National Party's police spokesperson there. It is 17 minutes away from 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback on anything you've heard this evening. Do get in touch. Text us on 2101, tweet us at checkpointrnz or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Who hasn't read the room when it comes to the concerns of the Hawke's Bay residents? They were worried about looting and lawlessness, and more police are now on the way after conversations between the Police Commissioner and the Prime Minister. Let us know your thoughts on that one, 2101 on text. Time to go to the headlines. Anea Evi, mena pitipita kōrero.
The Police Commissioner admits his comments about crime statistics in response to Hawke's Bay residents' concerns weren't helpful. Andrew Costa has previously said that crime in the region is no worse than any other day of the year. He's now told Checkpoint that there have been incidents of theft and burglary, but there's not widespread looting across the area. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has been in cyclone-devastated Hawke's Bay today to see the damage firsthand. Mark Erickson from the Waimar Fruit Company told Chris Hipkins that silt is continuing to damage crops and help is urgently needed. He says it's not fair that orchardists are paying the price for inadequate infrastructure. A spokesperson for the Environment Minister says a process is underway as the future of Rob Campbell as chair of Environmental Protection Authority looks in doubt. It comes just a day after Mr Campbell was fired from the Board of Health New Zealand. He had strongly criticised National's Three Waters policy despite being contractually obligated to remain politically neutral. Gisborne boaties are being warned to watch out for submerged logs in the water around East Cape and Poverty Bay. The harbour master, Peter Buell, says anyone taking a boat out in the region needs to stay alert for debris. The wife of one of the two Auckland firefighters who died in a major slip at Muriwai during Cyclone Gabrielle says he lived life to the full. Craig Stevens was critically injured when a house he was checking collapsed during Cyclone Gabrielle. At a memorial gathering today, his wife Lucy says he will forever be part of the community's history. And a popular zero-calorie sugar replacement has been linked to blood clots, stroke, heart attack and death. Erythritol is often used to add bulk or sweeten stevia, monk fruit and keto-reduced sugar products. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, a serious crash on State Highway 8 in Timadu near the intersection with Devans Road has closed the shoulder of the road there. Pass with care. And in the North Island, State Highway 1 at Rangiriri between Ohiniwai and Hampton Downs has long delays northbound near Paitai Road because of road surfacing. Our next news and weather is at 6 o'clock.
Ngā mihi, Evie. Some vegetable prices have doubled since Cyclone Gabrielle hit New Zealand and decimated vast areas of crops. Kumara and leafy vegetables are among the veggies hardest hit by flooding, and supermarkets and wholesalers say customers should get used to higher prices. Tom Taylor has this report.
I used to spend like $30 and now it's gone up to $40 to $50, so it makes it hard. Cauliflower, broccoli, it used to be like $1.99 and now it's gone up to $4, and it's only a small little broccoli, so it's not really worth it.
Customers are feeling the bite of rising vegetable prices in the wake of Cyclone Gabrielle. At Auckland greengrocer Point Chev Fresh, assistant manager Mani Singh says he's never seen such a big increase in such a short time.
Kumara price has gone really up like this, and $9 a kilo. So normally we were selling it $4.50 something.
At Fruitwell Grey Lynn, kumara have shot up to $12.99 a kg, while broccoli heads are $5.99 each. Store manager Hitul Patel says they've got no choice but to pass the cost on to customers.
Everything looks inflated, like it looks that we are busy, but like actually our margins have dropped quite a bit because the prices has gone up. Obviously will show that sales has gone up, but our actual margin of the product has dropped.
He says fruit like apples, which are diversified across New Zealand, have more resilience than vegetables like kumara, with the vast majority of its stock coming from Northland's Kaipara district, which experienced severe flooding in the cyclone. Rain has also impacted the quality and shelf life of green veggies like lettuce, rocket and cauliflower. After the price increase is already in effect, Mr Patel expects potatoes and onions to follow in the medium term.
Right now, a lot of growers have suffered quite a lot of losses. They have to replanting and all those things. It takes time. Nothing can be done overnight, unfortunately.
Customers at supermarket chains Countdown and Foodstuffs have also seen their veggie prices shoot up.
Maybe in some places there's an extra $10, but it's not much I can do about it. You know, I'm a uni student, so if it's $1 more, it's $1 more, but I'll put that on StudyLink, so she'll be right.
They're going to
increase, right? Unfortunately, supply and demand, and just with all the bad weather, the farmers are going to have a difficult time trying to match that.
On Countdown's online store, red kumara is currently selling for $14 a kg, while at Pack and Save it ranges from $8 to $11. If prices remain this high, they could be on track to beat the record monthly average of $8.99 a kilo set in November 2017. A Countdown spokesperson says the chain's experiencing challenges with its bagged salads, coleslaws, lettuce and kumara, but carrots, onions and potatoes are still in plentiful supply for now. Foodstuffs says it's unclear just how high kumara prices could reach until the harvest is complete. But with the current information, customers could expect higher prices all the way through the year until the next harvest in February 2024. At one of New Zealand's biggest wholesalers, MG Group, Chief Executive Peter Hendry says it's up to the customer how long these prices stay up.
If the demand's still strong and volume's not there, the prices will stay high. But if the consumer says, look, I'm not paying that price for the kilogram, there'll be a point where the consumer goes, no, I'm not going to buy that anymore, and demand lessens until the price gets to the point where they'll re-engage.
Around the country, he says Hawke's Bay's apple exports will be impacted, while Gisborne's supply of citrus fruit will suffer in the short to medium term. The impact of flooding in Pukekohe could see gaps in the market for onions, potatoes and leafy greens in months to come. He says although prices are likely to climb, there are some things consumers can do to cope during this time.
It's just being sensible in terms of range of purchasing. Sometimes consumers waste a lot of produce at home. It's just making sure they're buying sufficient volumes for their current needs and maybe doing a little bit more regular shopping and making sure they keep their produce fresh and they don't have that waste. But look, pricing will soften over time. It's just at the moment with these weather events, it's going to be a bit of a battle for a few weeks.
Mr Hendry says trials are underway to grow kumara in other parts of the country, increasing its resilience against future severe weather events.
Tom Taylor there. Let us know what you're spotting in the veggie store. Text us on 2101 or you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. When civil defence kicked into gear in the aftermath of Cyclone Gabrielle, Tairāwhiti's young people did too. Taike Air, based in Gisborne's central city, is billed as a collaborative space with an agenda for social and environmental action. Its team comprises people of all ages from all over the region. Now, when bad weather struck, they were perfectly placed to step in and lend a hand. Our reporter Kate Green has the story from Gisborne.
Walking into Taike Air is like entering a cosy living room. Desks look out onto the street through large windows, curved around a group of squashy sofas, and in the kitchen, a coffee machine hums. Mac Wynne has her legs tucked underneath her on an armchair. At 18, she works full-time as a rangatahi entrepreneurship activator. Mostly, she says, she just does what needs doing. The week following Gabrielle, the Taike Air hub on Peel Street was a drop-in centre for people looking for news and connection. Their free kai store began accumulating donations from the public, left for those who needed it. Soon enough, the team was busy unloading trucks at the Salvation Army, packing planes down at the airport, and putting together food boxes to be sent up the coast alongside charity supergrants.
We've got the people here who have the drive to help, so we were able to go out and do that help. But now that the immediate response has sort of ceased, we are going and looking at longer-term solutions.
Crucial infrastructure like water, power and internet were knocked out by the cyclone. Mac Wynne says there are plenty of ways people can be helped to be better prepared.
We've had a lot of conversations about being more self-sufficient in houses and communities and talking about how we can educate people into growing more of their own food so they're less reliant on the supermarkets. Trying to figure out why they've got these policies around not being able to have water tanks in town.
She says innovation comes from challenge.
If you're able to just be comfortable, you may have a little bit of resentment towards the way things are, but you're not going to be pushed to change it. Once something comes that breaks the norm and puts you outside of your comfort zone, you are more likely to realise the real problems that are going on.
As well as the immediate response, Taike Air is playing the long game. Here's Steph Barnett, Youth Innovation Coordinator.
Certainly manpower was going around and was given, but also there's some things that long term are going to continue to be really impactful, like people being empowered to start their own businesses or start their own social enterprises or become part of a strong community.
She says considering the financial impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle, building financial resilience in strong connected communities is so important. Malcolm Mersham from Trust Tairāwhiti says the cyclone exacerbated existing problems.
We've been talking about these things for like years now, since first engaging in this space. We've talked about community resilience, ability to grow your own food, power, connectivity up the coast, all those types of things.
It's not all disaster relief. Taikea also has an escape room built by the community, which allows their pop-up shop to remain rent-free for rangatahi. A tech design and makerspace for the community is currently in development, called Haututu Hack Lab. Matt Gwynn produces a podcast, collecting and sharing stories of impact from the community.
What comes along with the privilege of having this space is I need to try and make it available for other people, hold the door open for the next person behind me, and find a way to allow other young people to be able to share their voices. Especially because I'm now 18, so I've reached the voting age, I'm able to be more involved in those sort of things that I was never allowed to be involved in before.
In a disaster and in the aftermath, everyone has their part to play.
It is 7 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. Do stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. The Rolling Stones and Billy Joel both sing about it, and it plays a starring role in one of Humphrey Bogart's most memorable lines. Now, a New Zealand-made gin's been named a world best. Roots Marlborough Dry Gin has been awarded World's Best London Dry Gin. I need a glass of something to wash that title down. At the World Gin Awards in the UK. It's made by Blenheim-based Elemental Distillers, and Ben Leggett, one of the founders, joins us now. Hi, Ben.
Hi, how you doing? Kia ora.
Very well. Cheers to that award then. So did they tell you why you're a winner?
They not quite in the detail yet. We're hoping to get a bit more detail from the head judges in the next couple of days, but obviously just to receive the award at all at this stage is just amazing news.
Yeah, what does it mean to you?
Gosh, good. It means a fair bit, really. I mean, to begin with, we're very much the epitome of the term boutique when it comes to boutique distilleries. We're a beautiful little distillery set up in the heart of Marlborough, surrounded by vineyards on two sides. The distillery is built out of upcycled shipping containers, and day in and day out, there's just two of us here operating. But our entire goal has always been to make the single best London dry gin that we possibly can, and to be obviously recognised that now on such a global scale is just beyond our expectations.
There is a lot in that. First off, for the people who are not experts in gin, what is a London dry gin?
Indeed, yeah. So London dry gin is very much arguably a bit of a purist category. Gin has obviously exploded, globally in a pretty big way here in New Zealand as well. London dry gin, first and foremost, has to be juniper predominantly when it comes both in the flavour and in the aroma. So consumers will buy any bottle of London dry gin, whoever makes it, and it will taste like juniper, and therefore it will arguably taste like gin when they take it home. We're not allowed to add any forms of sugar or any forms of flavourings post-distillation, so it's very much a purist gin category for gin lovers.
Is gin making a thing in New Zealand? Like, do we grow juniper berries in quantities where we can do this?
Oh, gin is definitely a big thing, and especially in the last sort of 3 to 5 years, it's exploded with a vigour here, absolutely. And there's a huge number of new brands and distilleries that have come out of the woodwork in that same time. Juniper is absolutely a plant that can grow in New Zealand, and there's some amazing groups working to do exactly that. But it doesn't come without its challenges. It takes about 8 to 10 years to mature to the point of even producing fruit. It's a dioecious species, so only the female it produces it, but you still need the male to pollinate. And harvesting berries ripen slowly over a period of about 18 months. So you need to keep constantly going back to the same plant to even harvest a little bit each time. So it doesn't come without its challenges.
Hey, do those wine people give you the side eye, Ben?
They're some of my best clients, and there's no shortage of obviously Sauvignon Blanc here, and so to be the only gin distiller surrounded by a bunch of very, very fond libacious people is obviously just nothing but a benefit to us as well.
Okay, so you're two blokes making some gin with some other people helping you out, and you started off literally in a garage, right? So how do you go from garage to world champs in what seems like record time?
Honestly, I'm still trying to find the answer myself. But, honestly, our story is more than just, two guys and a couple of shipping containers. It's very much the local community, the people who have been supporting us. We very strictly stick to that sort of London dry style as part of our MO. But in order to be able to harvest the best botanicals we possibly can from around New Zealand, we have to work with local foragers, local growers, and even local volunteers who help us do things, whether it's picking wild gorse flowers or peeling grapefruit every year. And they're as much a part of our success as anything that we've been doing ourselves.
Is demand going through the roof? Has word spread?
Yeah, Mum's been a legend. She met me at the airport at 8:30 p.m. when I flew in 2 nights ago with some bunting, and there was probably all of 3 people in the airport at that time, but she gave me my own little ticket parade when I arrived.
Yay, go Mum. She's awesome. What's
Mum.
Mum's name?
Mum's name is Maureen, or Mo, as she prefers to be called. Yeah.
Good on Mo. That is fantastic. Now, just before we go, Ben, if you were sitting down to a celebration, which I am sure you have, what would you serve? What would you serve for your celebration as a tipple?
Honestly, we would serve a classic gin and tonic. We would a nice healthy pour of Roots Marlborough Dry Gin, topped up with some beautiful East Imperial Yuzu tonic or East Imperial Burma Classic tonic, a lovely New Zealand tonic brand, a little bit of a squeeze of citrus lime if you have it, stir it down and charge it with a second straight away.
Well, congratulations, Ben. It's been a pleasure talking to you. That is Ben Leggett, world champs when it comes to Best London Dry Gin, and that was at the awards in the UK. Mo picked him up from the airport with a ticker tape parade. Mum sounds like a pearler. A lot of you getting in touch here with some feedback on veggie prices. Grow your own veg, folks. Beat the price increases. That's from Meg and Point Chev. What are you growing, Meg? How's it looking? And did it stand up to the rain? Craig says, saw pumpkin on sale for $12.99 at Lower Hutt Pack and Save. Then saw a larger pumpkin on sale for $8 at the Saturday River Car Park Market. Yep, got to shop around, that's for sure. Nikki says, bagged coleslaw, $8.99 at Fresh Choice, Richmond, Nelson yesterday. Really? Are these not South Island cabbages? Perhaps the South could have their own economy and not get dragged about by the North. And there's quite a lot of feedback on the police commissioner and the issue of looting and crime in the Hawke's Bay. This person says the threat is real. Mark Mitchell is speaking real sense. That's the National Party spokesperson on police. Another says good on Mark Mitchell for calling out those thugs. Police commissioner seems to be blaming nervous residents instead of acknowledging there are low lives trading on people's misery, this listener says. Another reckons that don't shift police away from other areas.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Ngā mihi o te pō. Good evening. I'm Evie Ashton. Rob Campbell is set to be sacked as chair of the Environmental Protection Authority, having already been ejected from Health New Zealand's board. The axing comes after Mr Campbell strongly criticised a National Party policy online at the weekend. Despite an obligation, he remained politically neutral. Here's Deputy Political Editor Craig McCulloch.
Mr Campbell has not gone quietly since being fired as Te Whatu Order's chair, denying any wrongdoing and calling the move an overreaction. Both National and ACT want him gone from the EPA too, and RNZ can reveal the minister responsible, David Parker, has today written a letter to Mr Campbell. A spokesperson for the minister says a process is underway and Mr Campbell has a time frame within which to respond. When contacted by RNZ around 3 o'clock, Mr Campbell said he'd not seen any correspondence yet.
Rob Campbell believes he's been dumped due to his support for co-governance, but Prime Minister Chris Hipkins says that's not the case. The Police Commissioner says there's no widespread looting of flooded properties in Hawke's Bay, but acknowledges that people aren't feeling safe. Angry locals are demanding more patrols, and the police have brought a second mobile base into the region. A third one is on its way. Andrew Costa told Checkpoint it's not possible to have an officer outside every home, but there is a significant police presence.
We have absolutely had instances of theft and burglary. We do not have widespread looting across the area. And, in the end, our role is both to respond to actual safety and feelings of safety. And, we have to acknowledge that there is a gap into which these communities are feeling safe.
Andrew Costa says police do have an accurate picture of the level of crime, which hasn't gone up. National's police spokesperson Mark Mitchell, however, says the police commissioner made a big error in telling Hawke's Bay residents crime hadn't risen. Mr Mitchell told Checkpoint that gangs have been very active in the region. Hawke's Bay growers have pleaded in person with the Prime Minister for more help from the government to deal with their devastating losses from Cyclone Gabrielle. Mark Erickson from the Waimar Fruit Company told Chris Hipkins that it's not fair that they're paying the price for inadequate infrastructure.
But we've been let down. We've invested millions and millions of dollars, all us, tens of millions, you know, in families or whoever. But it's the infrastructure that's failed us, and then it's like lotto. There's a lot of people on the other side of the river here haven't been affected, and so we shouldn't be penalised. The ones who've been affected and that's where it's hardest.
You can certainly see where the breaches come through here.
Mark Erickson told the Prime Minister that help is needed urgently because the silt is continuing to do damage. The Gisborne Harbour Master is warning boaties to watch out for logs floating just beneath the surface of the sea. Civil Defence in Tairāwhiti says submerged logs have been spotted around East Cape and in Tūranganuiakiwa, Poverty Bay. The Harbour Master, Peter Buell, warns anyone taking a boat out on the water anywhere in the region needs to stay alert for debris. The All Blacks coach Ian Foster won't be reapplying for the top job. New Zealand Rugby announced today the next coach will be named within 6 weeks. Foster has this afternoon ruled himself out of contention, saying he wanted the next coach to be announced after September's Rugby World Cup. He says his sole focus is preparing the All Blacks for the World Cup. At least 29 people have been killed and 85 injured in a late-night train crash in Greece. Rescue workers are scouring through the severely damaged carriages after a passenger train collided with a cargo train and caught fire. This passenger describes what happened.
The passengers were all relaxed, some were asleep, and suddenly there was a sudden boom. Suitcases started falling, many windows broke, but we in carriage number 5 were lucky because somehow the doors opened and we managed to get out. We could see in the other carriages passengers were breaking the windows to escape.
The army has been mobilised to help and dozens of fire ambulances staff are at the scene. More than 100 University of Auckland staff and students marched along Princess Street in the city this afternoon in a strike over work and pay. Tertiary Education Union members are rejecting some proposed changes to the collective agreement. Ulrich Speidel, a senior lecturer in computer science, says current pay rates don't match inflation increases and it's affecting recruitment.
I'm already having trouble trying to justify to PhD students who finish with me why they would want to work for us.
The University of Auckland says it's disappointing to begin a new academic year with strike action. Finland has begun construction of a 200-kilometre fence on its border with Russia to boost security. The border guard says it will be 3 metres tall with barbed wire on top. Finland decided to build the fence last year after it saw an influx of Russians seeking to escape conscription. The governing party candidate has won the most votes in Nigeria's disputed presidential election. Bola Tinubu has a total of almost 9 million votes, far ahead of his main rival Atiku Abubakar. Here's the BBC's Mayeni Jones.
There's been frustration with the slow pace at which the results were announced. The Electoral Commission says this was because of technical issues with the new electronic system that has only been used nationally in these polls. The two main opposition parties have called the process a sham and called for new elections.
And several brands of hummus have been recalled due to possible salmonella contamination. New Zealand Food Safety says the brands are Lisa's, Greater Hummus and Prep Kitchen. The specific products are listed on the New Zealand Food Safety website's recall page. That's the news.
Tomorrow on Afternoons with Jessie Mulligan, the Money Doctor is in. Personal finance expert Mary Holm asks, are KiwiSaver default members getting a bad deal? And how do you know how well your KiwiSaver fund is doing? Plus, we're playing Link 3, and we remember a great moment in New Zealand sport, the 1976 hockey gold medal in Montreal. I'm joined by Selwyn Meister, who was on that team, and he joins me on Afternoons from 1 p.m. tomorrow on RNZ National.
You're back with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. Western areas from Northland to Wellington. Also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, the Central High Country and Waded Upper, mainly fine. Areas of fog tomorrow morning, then cloudy periods south of Whanganui. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, partly cloudy. Isolated showers mainly in the north, clearing this evening. Nelson and Marlborough, mainly fine. Showers possible inland Marlborough and about the Kaikoura coast tomorrow afternoon. Bulla, showers developing today. More frequent for a time tomorrow. Westland and Fiordland, rain for a time today with possible thunderstorms, showers tomorrow. Canterbury has fine weather. Otago and Southland, a few spots of rain today. Mainly fine tomorrow with a shower or two possible in the afternoon. And for Kohu, Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy, light showers today. It's 7 minutes past 6. I'll have news headlines for you at 6:30.
Kia ora rā e ho. No mai, hoki mai, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Hawke's Bay locals didn't hold back when they had a chance to tell senior police and local mayors what it's like living in the flooded region with looters prowling around. After surviving the trauma and living among the devastation for the past fortnight, tempers were short. Today the government has announced more police resources will be sent to the district. Well, joining us now is Napier Mayor Kirsten Wise. Kia ora, more police coming your way, mobile bases. Is this going to be enough?
Oh, kia ora, Lisa. And I'm waiting to get further details at the moment as to what they're actually sending, whether it is going to be more feet on the ground or if it is just some mobile vehicle hubs. So, but I do want to really acknowledge, I'm so incredibly proud of our Bayview and wider community who called that meeting last night to have that opportunity to be heard.
If it is just bases, mobile bases, will that be enough for you? Will that satisfy your community's concerns, or do you want to see more boots on the ground?
Oh, I think, talking on behalf of my community, they won't be satisfied with community hubs or mobile hubs. They really are feeling very anxious, they're feeling unsafe, and quite frankly, I think what they're asking for, and they made it incredibly clear last night, is that actual presence, visibility, people out and about.
So the Police Commissioner reckons they are visible. So can you be specific? What more do you think would be needed?
Well, I think if I speak about the Bayview community in particular, they were simply asking for a police officer to be there on shift 24/7. So I know they've not had that. I know the police have increased reassurance drive-throughs and they have increased visibility. So I do want to acknowledge that in terms of what the local police have done, but it hasn't been to the extent of having rostered police officers so that there's someone on duty 24/7, which is what the Bayview community has been asking for.
Why do you think it's been so hard for the police to understand the way that locals are feeling?
I think there's a number of factors. Obviously, they've been tracking the stats, and personally, I don't believe that's been helpful. But I understand that as part of their role, they need to do that. But they also need to appreciate, I think there has been a lot of unreported crime. I also think they need to understand and empathise with the way the community is feeling at the moment, and that they are feeling incredibly vulnerable, and that cannot be ignored. It needs to be acknowledged, and it needs to be supported and responded to.
The Police Commissioner has conceded that his comments have been unhelpful. What damage do you think some of the things he has said has done?
Oh, look, sadly, I think it has done significant damage in the trust that our local community has with our police force. And, that's something that we will need to address going forward and do the best that we can to rebuild that trust.
Some of the residents were saying that they are armed. What do you think of that?
I think it's really, really sad that it's got to the point where they've felt that they've needed to do that. It's not safe for them. It's not safe for others. And, that's, again, why I'd like to reiterate how proud I am that they did take that step last night to actually call in the police, call in the minister, to share this with them and say, okay, this is how we're feeling and this is how we're responding, and what are you going to do now?
Your community has obviously taken an absolute hammering, and part of that is road access as well, right? State Highway 5, a massive great big hole opened up earlier in the week, causing more problems. I mean, how long can you manage without that road?
Oh, look, this is one of the things that I'm actually really, really concerned about. It's not just the access from the north, but it's simply moving between Napier and Hastings, our two major cities. I was in Hastings today with meetings with the Prime Minister and Minister. It took me an hour and a half to get back to Napier, which is normally a 20-minute drive. This is holding up our whole community, our whole region, and that's not good for, as you can appreciate, so many different reasons. I've spoken to Minister Nash about this. He's got the responsibility now as the regional ministerial lead on our recovery, and I've said this is one of the really key priority areas, is to ensure that these access roads into and out of our region and between our two main cities, it needs to be resolved as quickly as possible.
Ideally and realistically, how long do you think that will be?
I don't have an answer to that at the moment. Unfortunately, we do have a meeting with Waka Kotahi on Friday, and of course these are predominantly state highways, so it's not our area of responsibility. They are the ones that have the funding, and they are the ones that have the decision making. So I will be asking some pretty tough questions on Friday and insisting that this needs to be resolved as quickly as possible.
Stuart Nash is your local MP, right? But he is also, as you point out, your representative in terms of the rebuild after the cyclone. Did you indicate to him that you'd like to go to the front of the queue with your roads?
Oh, I certainly did.
And what commitment did he give to you to push that?
He has certainly said that the priority is around these access roads, those connections that actually, as a region, are so vitally important for us.
You're a big tourism area, right? And you've got events that are on the calendar. For example, the Hawke's Bay Marathon. You know, I mean, how are you going to manage with that? You want people to come back to your community, and events have been cancelled and are being cancelled.
Oh, look, this is a huge concern for us, particularly here in Napier. Because we are very reliant on our tourism sector, and we've already had to cancel a number of events. So we are in conversation with Tourism Hawke's Bay constantly. We're all working together, and we do want to indicate to the rest of the country that we're working as hard as we can to ensure that we can be in a position to host the events that are, on our schedule in the foreseeable future.
Right now, though, are you in that position?
We're getting there. So we do have cruise ships coming back into our port next week. It's going to be quite a different experience for the passengers than they would normally have. And we're really focused on ensuring that we do have the infrastructure in place. We're talking to our tourism providers. We're talking to our accommodation providers. We're trying to get as well set up as we possibly can. So, I mean, you've mentioned the Hawke's Bay Marathon. Pre that, we've got the Rod Stewart concert at the Mission, which is at the start of April. So, no decision has been made about that as yet, but we're trying to get as well set up as we possibly can so that these events can proceed.
Thank you for joining us. That's Kirsten Wise, who is the Napier Mayor there. It is 6:15 and you're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Ukrainian forces say the situation in the eastern city of Bakhmut is extremely tense as Russian troops intensify their assault. They say Russia is trying to cut off Ukrainian supply lines to the city to force them to surrender or withdraw. Deutsche Welle's Nita Blake-Person has this report.
Russia's relentless attacks on Bakhmut have reduced the city to rubble. There are few signs of life on the ground, and from above, the scale of the damage is overwhelming. Now Moscow has further intensified its shelling. Ukrainian soldiers are fighting back as hard as they can.
We are hitting them with whatever we have. We are holding on against their infantry. They are not sparing people. The whole area is filled with their dead bodies.
Russian troops have for months tried to capture the city, and both sides have suffered high casualties.
My medics work practically non-stop. Before the full-scale invasion, we had 50 to 60 wounded in a 9-month rotation. Now sometimes we have more than that in one day. There's a lot of work, but these soldiers are the best.
Bakhmut holds limited strategic importance, but taking it would be a major symbolic victory for Russia. Ukraine's president admitted things were not going well.
The situation is constantly becoming more difficult. The enemy is constantly destroying everything that can be used to protect our positions for fortification and defense. Our soldiers defending in the Bakhmut direction are real heroes.
As Russia ramps up its attacks, it could be on the verge of claiming the city, ending the longest battle so far of its invasion of Ukraine.
Deutsche Welle's Nita Blake-Person there. Meanwhile, Russian authorities say a drone has crashed close to a gas facility near Moscow, yet no damage was caused. The governor of Moscow says it was a failed Ukrainian attack. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says he did not break an election promise with the move to raise the tax rate on superannuation accounts over $3 million. The federal government plans to double the tax rate on the nation's largest super accounts from 15% to 30%. It's expected to affect about 80,000 people. ABC reporter Matt Bamford visited one of Sydney's wealthiest suburbs to hear what people think.
Along this eastern suburbs cafe strip, the federal government's proposal has sparked plenty of debate. Outside the supermarket, I find John.
Yes, everybody's talking about it, those people who are on their way to that and those people who are past it. I think the general consensus is that people are less concerned about the actual mechanics of it. They're more concerned about the duplicity of the current government.
Right, like a broken promise.
Yeah, it's more like duplicity than a broken promise, you know.
He's not convinced the reforms will work and wants the government to take a broader approach to tax reform.
I think they're ineffective. I think what we really should be doing is looking at broadening the tax base to include everybody into the income tax base. It's crazy that you can be 59 and 364 days and pay income tax, and on your 60th birthday move to a superannuation and pay no income tax.
There are some here in favour of the change, like Margaret.
I actually think it's fine. If you've got over $3 million in your super, you're just using it to dodge tax. So what the frickin' hell? Go for it.
Is it going to affect you?
No way. No, it's absolutely fine. Tax it.
But what about the people who say, you know, don't change super? This is one of the things you don't change.
Oh, for God's sake, it's not changing super for most of the population. It really isn't even worth discussing. It is just being used as a tax shelter. The more money you've got, the more you can pay your financial advisors to find you loopholes to just save you paying tax. This is ridiculous that someone can have $400 million in their super.
Do you think it's going to get us the kind of revenue that we need right now, the tax revenue that we need right now, if it's only going to affect 80,000 people?
Well, if you're paying double the tax on $400 million worth of income, absolutely. It'll go quite a long way, I'd say.
And have you been discussing this a lot?
We've just been talking about it in the car just now. I think if people understand what it is, they will not have any problem with it, except for those 8,000 individuals.
80,000?
80,000, whatever. 80,000 individuals, they might get the shits, but who cares?
It is 6:20 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. US President Joe Biden's plan to wipe out $650 billion of student loan debt is now with the Supreme Court. Justices have been hearing arguments in 2 cases challenging Mr Biden's plan. The Biden administration says it has the power to forgive student loans to protect Americans from financial harms brought on by the pandemic. But 6 Republican-led states are questioning Mr Biden's power to do so. CNN's Jessica Schneider has the details.
Cancel student debt now!
Big stakes for more than 40 million student loan borrowers as the Supreme Court decides whether a program eliminating up to $20,000 in debt per borrower can go into effect.
To provide a measure of loan forgiveness to ensure that this unprecedented pandemic does not leave borrowers worse off in relation to their student loans.
The Biden administration is defending their student loan forgiveness program, arguing that it is necessary in the wake of the COVID pandemic. But the conservative justices repeatedly zeroed in on the program's $400 billion plus price tag to question whether the president, by way of his education secretary, has the power to enact this kind of relief.
I think most casual observers would say if you're going to give up that much amount of money, if you're going to affect the obligations of that many Americans on a subject that's of great controversy, they would think that's something for Congress to act on.
The Solicitor General responded that federal law allows for the Education Secretary to waive or modify loan obligations in the wake of an emergency, and the ongoing financial effects of the pandemic justifies the administration stepping in.
Without this critical relief for debtors, we are going to have a wave of default across the country with all of the negative consequences that has for borrowers. I think it is precisely the type of context where the executive should be able to implement those emergency powers.
The Supreme Court has repeatedly struck down programs implemented by the Biden administration under COVID, including the eviction moratorium and the testing or vaccine mandate for large employers. This student debt program uses the pandemic to justify forgiving $10,000 in federal loans for people making under $125,000 or $20,000 in loans for those with Pell Grants. About 20 million borrowers could see their remaining balances entirely wiped out. But Justice Neil Gorsuch asked whether that undermines basic fairness.
What I think they argue that is missing is cost to other persons in terms of fairness, for example, people who've paid their loans, people who don't have planned their lives around not seeking loans, and people who are not eligible for loans in the first place, and that $500 billion is being diverted to one group of favored persons over others.
The world-famous Michelin food guide has announced it's taking away a star from Guy Savoy's celebrated restaurant in Paris for the first time in more than 20 years. The BBC's Stephanie Prentice has more.
He's been named the best chef in the world for dishes including oysters in a frozen pool and lobster with green curry juice. But from Monday, Guy Savoy's Parisian restaurant will be opening its doors without its 3-star status for the first time since 2002. Michelin said that for such an important decision to be made, the site was visited by global inspectors multiple times. However, it never makes the reason for a demotion public. The guide hasn't downgraded anyone since the COVID-19 pandemic due to staffing and food price challenges, but has said it now needs to return to its former standards to stay relevant. The move to downgrade restaurants is always a controversial one, especially since the suicide of Benoit Loiseau, a close friend of Guy Savoy, after his restaurant lost a star 20 years ago. Mr. Savoy was made aware of the loss ahead of the guide's publication, and he wasn't alone in getting the bad news. Another 3-star restaurant in La Rochelle, Christopher Coutanceau's upmarket seafood site, also went from 3 stars down to 2. And another 20 French restaurants were downgraded from 2 stars to 1 in the latest guide. An undeniable hit for French cuisine on the world stage, but one that may at least trigger some delicious new dishes as the restaurants try to bounce back for next year's inspectors.
Staying with culinary delights, hundreds of people queued to get a taste of California in Wellington today. American chain In-N-Out Burger has set up a pop-up site in the city. Our reporter Samuel Rillstone and cameraman Angus Drever went to check it out.
St John's Bar on Wellington's waterfront transformed into a piece of American history. Wellingtonians were in and out of the doors from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. today to get a taste of In-N-Out Burger. The iconic burger chain opened in California in 1948 and now operates nearly 400 locations across the West Coast and southwest of the United States. In-N-Out Special Foreign Events Manager Luis Hernandez and his team were flown out from California to bring the experience to the capital.
We do these global marketing tours throughout many countries. So again, we're here to bring the Double Double to Wellington, and a huge success today. The Double Double is what we're known for. So it has our bun. It's a sponge dough bun, 2 pieces of meat, 2 pieces of American cheese, lettuce, tomato, and our spread, which is similar to Thousand Island dressing.
By the middle of lunch rush, Mr. Hernandez says they had served around 500 customers. With a wait time of around an hour and a half, the hype certainly had to be worth it for these lucky Wellingtonians, some even going the extra mile just to get a bite.
I'm doing like Lent. I'm trying to be vegetarian for Lent, but now I'm not, so it was pretty good. Yeah, I recommend.
We were supposed to go to university this morning, but we decided this was more important. The mystery of it all, it's fresh and new and something I've never seen before, in Wellington especially,
Californian Matt says In-N-Out was a big part of his childhood.
Get a taste of home while I'm living here in Wellington, so it's nostalgic, and In-N-Out's got a unique taste that just kind of makes you feel like you're back at home. It isn't really replicated elsewhere, so I don't know, it's just kind of cool that it's here for just a day and get to try it.
But what makes it different from every other burger joint?
It's not as big as a McDonald's or a Burger King, but it's also not frozen or like super macro. It's still kind of like that old school hamburger joint from the 50s, and it just tastes good. It tastes fresh, tastes good. It doesn't taste, artificial. So, I'm biased, but I do love In-N-Out.
So, time to see what all the hype's about. Yeah, it's good. It's, kind of like a Big Mac, but slightly different. American style, I suppose.
Ellie and Victoria met at college in the States and bonded over the burgers.
It's really special for us. Yeah. It's like a friendship thing. Every weekend probably. Yeah. And it was the same amount of time you had to wait in California as well, so we're used to it. We know it's good. We'll wait.
Luis Hernandez says there are no immediate plans to open an In-N-Out here in New Zealand, but pop-ups are a good way to measure interest.
All this talk of burgers and Michelin stars is enough to make a person's belly rumble. Anyway, if you were listening to that on radio, the video version will be on our website. Some feedback before we head off on Hawke's Bay and the growers there. This person says orchardists are self-employed business people. They have been at the mercy of the elements forever. They know the risks. They may want more, but us taxpayers are already left with a huge burden. Another person says, prioritise those growing food for the local markets, please. And someone wants to know why other businesses have insurance, but fruit growers don't seem to. On the subject of crime in these areas hit badly by Cyclone Gabrielle, this one in, why is there not a curfew declared in these devastated zones? Thank you for all your feedback this evening. That's pretty much all we've got time for. Now, the late news team will keep you updated throughout the evening. If you missed anything from the program or you just want to listen back to some stuff, you can find Checkpoint on Spotify, Apple or wherever you get your podcast from. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō, and tomorrow from 5 a.m, First Up asks the Deputy Prime Minister why the government has sidelined people's concerns about crime and violence in flood-hit areas. We'll catch you tomorrow. Kia pai tōpō.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Paul Mardier, I'm Evie Ashton. The future of Rob Campbell as chair of the Environmental Protection Authority is in limbo a day after he was sacked from Health New Zealand. More than 7,000 buildings in Auckland have been checked for damage since Cyclone Gabrielle hit. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has been in Hawke's Bay talking to flood-affected orchardists. And Napier Mayor Kirsten Wise is still waiting for details of the promised police boost, as the Police Commissioner says there's no widespread looting of flooded properties in Hawke's Bay. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7.
It's about rugby. Fairness.
It's not a fair game now, it's obvious that certainly the island nations haven't got enough money.
Power.
You want me off the line on that?
And race.
I could never be told to piss off back to the islands, you coconut.
The Pacific